Hi booktube. I'm trying a different angle today, so I don't want to go like this, look at the camera, it's weird. Anyways, I was still trying to figure out how to film in this new space. And I'm here with my September wrap up, finally, in the middle of October. Oh well, at least it's getting done. So I just counted, I read 12 things in September, and we're just going to start in the order that I have them on my screen over here. So first up is Lie Sleeping by Ben Aronovich. Yes, I know that I read 3 recently, but the other one was in August. So Lie Sleeping by Ben Aronovich, which I believe is book 7 or 8. I'm not entirely sure. In the Peter Grant Rivers of London series, it's called different things. And it was really good. I'm really enjoying that series. I'm taking a little break right now just because I'm almost caught up, but I don't want to completely catch up and have to sit there and wait for another book to come out. So if you don't know, Rivers of London is like a magical police detective story. We follow Peter Grant, who's not only just a new police officer in the UK, but also a new magician learning how to use magic, being a wizard. I don't think they've really settled on a term, a magic user. Yeah, and so this is book 8, so I can't really tell you too much about it. And then I also read, I'm going to skip ahead a few, I also read Tales from the Folly by Ben Aronovich. And that was my first time not listening to it on audiobook. So I generally listen to the Rivers of London series on audiobook, and I highly recommend that. Kobna Holbrook-Smith is one of those names that just stick with me. I remember, I'm horrible with names, but I remember that one because I've listened to like 8 audiobooks by him, 9 I think, because I listened to some short stories as well. And he's a great narrator, so I highly recommend that. And then I read this one on ebook, and it just, I guess I've associated Rivers of London so much with Kobna's voice that I didn't enjoy it as much. And I did skip one story. I got like halfway through it and I didn't see the point because it wasn't about any of the characters, so I was just kind of like, let's just skip ahead to characters that I know and love. Yeah, so I read those 2 books by Ben Aronovich. I read I Am Woman by Lee Miracle, and that is subtitled A Native Woman's Perspective on Feminism and Sociology. And it's really interesting. It was written in the 1980s, so there were a few things that were outdated but that I could overlook and forgive for the other bits of nuggets that were in there. And she mainly... See, there's things that when you're reading books from different cultures, you have to understand that they're not going to be told in the same way that you'd expect someone who's, you know, a white Canadian to tell that story, right? So she told it, it was all over the place, and I really liked that. It was like being in someone's mind, just like jumping from topic to topic, and you know, and eventually it all come together, and it was really good, and it dealt a lot with intersectionality, but I think this was before intersectionality became a word. I'm not sure. I know that the word is more recent. So it dealt with being, at the time the term used was Indian, but Native, First Nations, Indigenous people, and it dealt with LGBT as well. Not so much trans issues, but gay issues, which I thought was interesting for something written in the 1980s, in a positive light too. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. And she packed a lot in such a small book. Then I picked up Not Anyone's Anything by Ian Williams, and I thought Ian Williams would be a total favorite of mine after reading Reproduction. I love that book. You can see it right here. I actually bought a physical copy of that book after reading the ebook too. And so I thought, auto-buy author. Everything this author writes I'm gonna buy because it's cool. And I was kind of disappointed by Not Anyone's Anything. I thought it was all one novel, but it was actually short stories. And sorry if you hear noise in the background, my cats are watching the squirrels and chipmunks. So there might be a bit noise back there. anyways, I just didn't feel connected to the stories. I didn't feel connected to characters, except for in the first story, which was about a second generation Korean Canadian going to school, but she and her family pretty much only spoke English because they wanted to assimilate into society. So now she's taking a Korean class, and she meets a boy in that class. But other than that, the other stories were just kind of meh. I will try some of his other stuff. I just think it was maybe the short stories that kind of hindered the attachment, and this was an earlier work of his too, so that may have been another factor of me not liking it as much. One of my favorite books of the month, if not the year, is Gods of the Upper Air, and that was by Charles King. And so this is about, it's called the Boaz Circle. In case you're not familiar, Franz Boas, I believe his name was a professor of anthropology before it was really anthropology, and it talks about him and some of his famous students, mostly Margaret Mead, but he also talked about Zora Neale Hurston was in the group as well, kind of taught by him, and like his other people. And then there were a few other people whose names are escaping me, but there was a Native woman, and there was Margaret Mead's female lover, and yeah, that book was amazing. It talked, if you think that like the struggles that we're going through now in regards to like race and sexism and culture are all new, like you should definitely read this, because it's not. Like, these were, the Boaz Circle were the people that were fighting against eugenics. They were fighting against phrenology, which is like saying that you can determine a person's personality based on the shape of their skull and their head, or like measuring black people's skulls to prove that they have smaller brains and are therefore lesser people or not people. They were fighting against these things. I was surprised to hear that Zora Neale Hurston was a part of this. I really wanted to read her book. I'm horrible with names, but her most famous book, Their Eyes Were Watching God. And because they talked about that and how she came about writing that, because her anthropological expeditions were to black southern United States. And so she reflects that a lot in her writing. So that was fascinating. It did spend a bit too much on Margaret Mead's personal love affairs for my taste. But that's just because I don't identify with any of that stuff. So that was my only criticism of this. It was a really, really good audiobook as well. Then I listened to, I want to say I listened to like 95% of Blood Elves. So I'm including it as read. And then I looked up how it ended. So I consider it read. I just couldn't do it anymore. I was finding myself just not listening to it. And so this is the first full-length novel in the Witcher series. I loved, let me just preempt this by saying I loved the short stories. I love them. But this one just is lacking all the monsters. I think there's one scene with a monster, and that concentrated mostly on Ciri and her adventure into spoilers. So yeah, I didn't really like Blood of Elves. And I won't be continuing on with the series, unfortunately. Then I read The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin, and that is another favorite. Okay, I think that one probably tops Gods of the Upper Air. If we have separate fiction and non-fiction, Gods of the Upper Air will be top non-fiction, and Dispossessed is top fiction. It might be one of my favorite books of the year. Like, the favorite book of the year. Oh my god, this book was so amazing. So it takes place on these two planets, right? And this one planet is very Earth-like. It's very capitalist. There's wars, people are driven by money. And there's a group on this planet that left like 2,000 years ago or something like that to the moon, but it's also like another planet. It's not, it has like an atmosphere and everything. And they're an anarchist, communist society. Everyone shares, there's no leaders, everyone gets, you can just pick up and move, and you'll have a place, and you'll have clothes, and you'll have food, and you don't have to worry about anything. You just have to, be part of the labor and, pursue your own passions. But that doesn't always work out, right? There's stuff going wrong there as well. And so we follow one man as, as he's growing up on that planet, but then every other chapter is him. He's traveled from this planet, from Anaris to Uraz, or vice versa. He travels to the capitalist planet, this anarchist communist guy, and he's a physicist as well, like the super smart genius physicist. And so you get to experience both worlds through this one person. Oh, and the commentary, the social commentary. Editing Courtney here, and I just want to let you know that it's not just bad stuff about the capitalism and no good stuff, or just good stuff about the communist anarchist and no bad stuff. I thought it was like condemning on both sides, so it's not just, you know, an echo chamber of good or bad ideas. It's, you know, it reflects both in different ways. Just wanted to share that as well. It was just amazing. I gotta read more Ursula K. Le Guin. I have in the past, but it's been such a long time that I know I have to pick up more. I highly recommend you read The Dispossessed, in case I haven't said that already. Oh, and then I almost forgot that I read this book, and I actually took it off my shelves. I didn't really enjoy it. It's The Principles of Uncertainty by Mara Coleman, and it's kind of like, I categorized it as a graphic novel because there's some art, and then there were some pictures, and there was like writing on the art and text, but it's shaped like a novel. And it's just her opinions on things, but she's like a rich, highbrow artist in New York, so like there's nothing there to connect. She was talking about things like, everyone knows this, like everyone knows this opera singer, and everyone knows this obscure artist that, you know, I'm just like, but I don't. Can you like explain things better? So I guess it wasn't for me. I also read Breaking Free by Rachel Jeffs. And if you don't recognize the Jeffs name, Warren Jeffs was the leader, or is, I guess, still the leader, I don't know if he's dead or not, of the Fundamental Latter-day Saints, which is a breakup of the Mormon Church. And they're like super fundy. So like, he dictates everything. He dictates everything from your name to like whether you're going to be born, whether your parents are allowed to have sex, whether you're allowed to have sex, who you're going to marry, you know, where you're going to live, what you're going to do, like everything is full control. And Rachel Jeffs is one of his like 200 children or something. That's a bit of an exaggeration because he might have 200 children. I don't know. He has a lot of children. He had like 70 wives at one point, so yeah. And this was her story growing up under her father's thumb. Some horrible, horrific things happened to her, and then her eventually deciding, you know, enough, I've had enough, and leaving. Really good. That's all I can say. I don't want to tell you much about it because I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, if you're fascinated at all with cults, definitely give that a read. Then I also read Pinocchio by Carlo Collodi, and I found out that it is the second most translated work after the Bible, which I thought was pretty cool. So Pinocchio, if for some reason you don't know, no judgment there because I guess it's one of the older Disney movies. It's about a young puppet who's alive. Yeah, and it's definitely a children's story, and it was definitely serial. You could see that the stories had no real connection, so like the chapters were individual stories. And they're only like 3 to 5 pages long, not very long at all. And not very similar to the movie at all. Yeah, Geppetto, I don't even know if, I'm horrible with names. Geppetto didn't carve him, and Geppetto was like a beggar. Killed the cricket, who didn't even have a name, like the first time you saw him. So it's like, they kind of changed some things for the movies, right? Yeah, it was okay. Then I listened to another thing called Earpedia Animals by Sue Perkins, and I'm counting it as a book even though it was more like a podcast because it was available on Audible and it's on Goodreads, so I'm counting it as a book. And it's basically just like very short, like I think the longest one was 15 minutes, and they're generally around the 10-minute mark. Different interesting facts about weird animals, like she talked about the lungfish, she talked about kangaroo, she hates kangaroos, and it was really quite fun to listen to. Yeah. And then I read The Awakening by Kate Chopin, which has been on my TBR. It's probably one of the longest books I've ever owned, to be honest. I just never got around to reading it until now. And I think I talked about that in one of my vlogs, about how it was so progressive. It's about this woman who decides that she wants to just be herself. She just wants to be fully realized, fully actualized. And she also kind of falls in love with another man outside of her marriage. So she doesn't want to be, you know, someone's wife. She doesn't, like, she'll be married to him, like, she loves her husband, but she doesn't want to be his wife, you know? She doesn't want to be possessed by him. She doesn't want to be a mother. She loves her children, but she wants to be something more, right? And so that was, like, really super progressive. Like, she even moves out of the family home and, like, lives by herself, and all this stuff. But then it was so regressive, or conservative, sorry, bad joke there, regressive, in how it treated black people. So, like, the nanny for her children, which is, like, someone you should know their name, right? She didn't name that person. She never gave that person a name. She was just called them the quadroon, which means, like, a quarter black. And it was just like, that's like, how can you be so progressive towards women's rights and everything, and then so regressive when it comes to black women's rights, right? It's just, I just have to shake my head. So that's it for September. I've already been talking for almost 17 minutes, so I'm just gonna stop there. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what your favorite book that you read in September was, and thank you for watching.